For many years, the EPA has put out an annual climate change indicators report to let the country know where we stood on the issue of climate change, to talk about the causes and effects of climate change. But for some reason, I guess it's hard to put our finger on, this report actually stopped coming out starting in the year 2017. Now, I'm not sure if everybody's aware of it, but in the year 2017, we got a new president. We got a new president who at one point had told us, the public, that climate change was a hoax being perpetrated somehow by the Chinese. Not sure what for, but dang it, they were doing it. And that was his thought on climate change. So, of course, his EPA, which was run by Wheeler, former lobbyist, yeah, they didn't do anything. Well, finally, after 4 years, these suppressed reports have come out. And for the first time ever in these reports that were, by the way, produced during the Trump administration, they just weren't allowed to be public, the EPA finally admits for the first time that human activity is a driver of climate change. Think about that for a moment. We've known, like, everybody watching this probably is like, okay, yeah, we know that. No. This is the first time the EPA of the United States has ever admitted this in one of their reports. The first time. Something that, by the way, the fossil fuel industry's own documents show that they knew at least as early as the 1970s. Some of their documents from the 1940s actually suggest that using their product could cause environmental changes. They didn't quite know what it was back then in the 40s, but in the 70s, crystal clear that the burning of fossil fuels by human beings was causing climate change. That is from the industry's own documents. So 50 years later, not quite 50, 43-ish, I think, somewhere in there. So 43 years later, the EPA finally says, all right, we're finally catching up to where the fossil fuel industry was in the 70s, and we're ready to admit that, yes, human activity is a driver of climate change. Whew. Now what? No, really, I mean, that's a legitimate question. Now what? You know, I don't always just sit here with answers or analyses. Sometimes I want answers. It's great that these reports have finally come out. It's great that the EPA has announced this, but cool. Announcing it's only half the battle. In fact, no, it's not even half the battle. That's like 1% of the battle. 99% of the rest of the battle is actually the battle. You know, doing something about emissions, doing something to get this country moving towards renewables instead of relying on the same fuels we've been burning for over 100 years, or in the case of coal, over 300 years. Okay? We have the technology. We need the infrastructure, and that is actually a big part of Joe Biden's infrastructure package. You know, upgrading the energy grid, being able to handle these forms of renewable energy. I just signed it for the biggest offshore wind farm here in the United States, so that's great. We are making strides. You know, we're finally making the progress we need to make. The EPA is clearly making progress, finally admitting, yes, okay, we did it, you did it, we all did it. But we also have to address the government itself. The Pentagon is one of the largest polluters on the planet. We have to do something about that. Because if we cannot address that problem too, then we can't be serious about addressing emissions. We have to hold the companies responsible for this liable. Like I said, they have known since at least the 70s that this was happening because of their product. They suppressed the data, then funded all these studies, all these politicians to go out there and say that, no, climate change is a hoax. Climate change is not caused by human beings. Climate change is caused by just the weather, freaking out a bit. None of that's true. We know this, and they know it. And even the politicians who tell us otherwise, they know it too. Now there's no denying it. So let's continue to move forward. I'm seeing positive signs with the Biden administration. I'd love to see a lot more, but we're getting there. And at this point, after 4 years of not just inaction, but backwards motion, even a little forward progress is better than what we had.